And I'm speaking to a lot of architects, and when I was in the fourth grade in boarding, this was way back in 1982. A friend of mine, his father was an architect, and I'd first time seen small models being made. And at that moment, I said, architect. I couldn't figure out the word, but I said, probably that's something I'd like to do. So I'm quite excited to talk to a lot of architects and talk about what I do. There's this community in Rajasthan, they're called the Behrupiyas, and I'm sure there are similar communities all around the country as well. Now the Behrupiyas are a community of people who dress, who act like Hanuman, and they act like Ravan, and they act like Ram, and they go around entertaining people across the state. There's a whole community, and they have a whole tradition around it. And in a way, I don't think I'm any different. I change depending upon whom I meet, where I am, and we all do. So I start off with this sort of multiple personalities that I have with some of my work. I'd studied design in NID Ahmedabad, and I joined in 1991, finished in 1996. And to be very honest, I did not find a job after I finished. So I was a trained industrial furniture designer with no job that I wanted to do. So the best thing I did, and probably the wisest thing I did, was go back home to Jaipur. And those are the most exciting periods of our life, and the most challenging also. So at a time when you need support and you have a family, you're not worried about your gas or your maid or your food. You can single-handedly concentrate on what you're doing. So I started off as a general contractor, fixing up people's homes, tiles, furniture, clocks, watches, just about everything. And as I was working, I came across craftspeople who could do amazing things. And that is kind of where my journey starts. The journey starts not as things that we make, but as thoughts that we have. When I was in my third year, I was working with a potter called Kripal Singh Shekhawat. And that was the time when I realized that the training I was getting in NID was only about things. And what really makes us is our stories, is our culture, our identity. Now this was a product, I'll go across products and projects that illustrate the various stories that I come across and that inform what I do. So this is a product called the Shiva Jug. Shiva, it's a god that all of us are familiar with. Now while we choose to segregate our belief in myths and our religions or practices from what we do, they are very deeply connected. The jug is made in copper, which has got connotations and derives from Ayurveda. Shiv, because he has the Ganga in his hair. So can we look at what we have behind us, what is us, what forms us, as things that become our consistent narrative or our shared thought? Very often as designers, we kind of choose the higher ground that we know what is good, we know what is best. But at times, I think there is a meeting ground for all of us. This product won the UNESCO award. It is all handmade by silversmiths, and because silver is very expensive, we make it in copper, but we leave the weld in place. The weld is always in silver. Now, when we talk about culture, many of us have actually known history more through the Amar Chitra Katha books, comics, than we have through our history textbooks. Very often we put culture as something we had, but culture is an ever-evolving thing. It is who we are now, what is shared between us. People across the country know their history because of Amar Chitra Katha, and I do not think it's a comic. I think it is our culture. This range of products kind of brings back that memory and the stories that we all associate with it. These are all made in hand-woven daris and are products that people can carry literally as a chip on their shoulder. Now, it's not just culture and past, but it's also current, current news that informs us. It is part of our culture, and at one point in time, there was this New Delhi bug it was named New Delhi by the Lancet magazine because it was a bug which was highly resistant to most antibiotics. And the Indian government was up in a furor that how dare you call it the New Delhi bug, it's an insult. But, reflect back on it, it's a bug that we have created. Now, what if that bug actually did something good and made us read or made us want to learn? Would we not have said, yes, we are proud to call it the New Delhi bug because it makes us better people? Many people have their way of writing stories. Journalists have the gift of the word. People who sing have the gift of music. What do we have? We have our professions. We have what we do as a way to voice our thoughts. So this is kind of a thought that I'm voicing out and opening it up. It's a product, we call it the New Delhi bug. It's the world's thinnest reading light. World's thinnest reading light. It's made out of copper, paper, battery, and LED. It's also a bookmark, and it's put on by putting the two antennae together. It's made very simply in small batches, a batch of say 50 pieces made in one go. Now, here I come to relationships. All of us form relationships. It's kind of like the moss that we gather as our stones roll down time. I'm a Jain by belief, and our monks, they carry this thing called a Bhiksha Patra, which is made in wood. Having learned furniture design, I've understood that the knowledge and the skill required to make those bowls was beyond phenomenal. Machines cannot do it, robots cannot do it. And when I say they can't, I do have robots in my factory in Chicago, and they cannot do that. This was being done in a village, in a group of villages in Jodhpur, in district Jodhpur, Jaitaran, Pipad, Bagdi, on this kind of a machine. It's a very, very simple machine. And this is Abdul Khalik. I've known him for the last 26 years, and it's the relationship that I carry on till today. Now, these are the bowls. They're made in sets of 9 or 16. When it's made in a set of 16, the largest bowl has a diameter of about 16 inches. Each bowl is about 3 mm thick. So imagine the knowledge and the skill and the patience required to craft each bowl. What is also interesting is that the wood inside is not discarded. Every third bowl comes out of the same piece of wood. So a set of 9 bowls actually comes out of 3 blocks of wood. It is an incredible skill, and any of you who do know about wood turning would kind of imagine what it takes. Now, the point was that, yes, they have this skill, but how do we take it forward? How do we take it, across and make products that still refer to the same skill and product, but are yet different? Now, the original bowls that you saw, now these bowls, we took it from them and we started showing it to the world, and we made a very large company in the US start a separate section called One of a Find, and that it's a big company, it's called Crate and Barrel, if anyone you're familiar with it. They started a separate section to sell these kind of bowls and products which had stories. Now, on the flip side, I saw these bowls in an Hermes showroom in Venice. Each bowl was being sold for upwards of ₹100,000. These bowls are made for the Jain community. Hermes was selling it, and on this bowl, they'd embellished it with a little leather strap and sold it for ₹100,000. So the mind starts short-circuiting, as in, what's going on? There is no context. It's just a product divorced from where it was or what it was, and sold to somebody to whom it does not even matter. These products are made with the same skill. Now, many of you know that wood warps. So in the monsoon, you have the doors getting jammed and drawers getting stuck and things not quite fitting together. Now, the real genius, which is not seen in those bowls, is how do you make them stack? They're meant for food, so they do carry water, they do carry hot things. So how do you make sure that they don't warp? Now, that is a tacit skill. How do you know the wood is right? So these bowls, this is a set of tiffins which also perform the same function of food storage. And also, if this wood warps, it doesn't work because they have to stack perfectly. So it's building on the same knowledge, building on the same product, being respectful to what it is, but moving it in a slightly oblique manner. Those bowls are very fragile, which means if they fall, they break. But that is not what a contemporary house wants. So how do we, make it evolve? This is another project where we worked in a village called Sultana. Sultana is in district Jhunjhunu. There are about 400 families who practice metalwork out there. Now, Jhunjhunu is very well known for two things, actually three things: for swords, for the kadhai, and for the bird cages. The kadhai is the big wok that is used for a lot of cooking. Now, the swords are banned, are illegal to make, and so are bird cages. Many of us do not know that. And the kadhais did have a big market. But we had a large number of people with a skill, and this was a government project that was given to me, where I got to choose to work in this village where a skill was there that we can potentially explore. It's a very basic skill, but a skill that can be interpreted in many manners, in many ways. Now, this is just one of the products that we designed. Now, the design looks fairly simple, easy, but the kind of things that go behind the mind are, so when you're talking about Rajasthan, we're talking about Jhunjhunu, it's far away. Sometimes we have to take things by camel to the artisan's place and back. Stackability becomes very important. So while for a product it's good for it to stack, it is important for the process as well. How do we take something which is used to make bird cages, which is a typical low-value item, into something that a person would willingly pay more for? Now, logically, had I made a dining chair, has a bigger market, but has a lower value because a person buys 12 of them. But when we have a lounger, it's a statement piece. It's something that becomes iconic, that people can then give the kind of money that such a product can expect. At the end of this project, we made a small catalog of about 40 products, and we gave a list of all the exporters in Rajasthan. Now, many of you know that Rajasthan is full of entrepreneurs who are enterprising, have clients around the world. So we gave them this list of exporters and this catalog, and told them to go and meet people. This is where we tried to build entrepreneurs out of, with these artisans. I was very happy to see that, as time moved on, not only did they develop more products, they improved their skills and their repertoire enormously. So now when I go back to the village, I say, I want this gauge of brass wire. They say, yes, we have it. So giving it out like that and opening it up actually was beneficial to me. This is another village called Geejgarh, which is about 2 hours from Jaipur, where I was working. Now, Geejgarh is a small town where a lot of young people had left because there's nothing much to do in the village. And a lot of women were at the back and stayed back. So this is working with an NGO called Read India, where we took the skill of palm leaf weaving and basket making into making products. Now, this product is again sold by a large retailer, and we got great commercial success out of it for us as well as for the people who are working. We're selling this in Australia and the US, both through large format retail companies. Now, this is a very interesting story. Many years ago, me and my wife had come down to this small town called Karaikudi in Chettinad, and I saw these big red bowls, and I said, I love them. I love them so much, I bought all of them, 20 or 30 bowls, which sat with me in my house for close to about 2 years. And my wife said, no, you need to figure out something out. I'm going to throw them away or do something. So I have this machinist who works for me. I told him, can you just put 3 legs beneath, it'll become a table. Now, we used to have a store in our basement. In about a month's time, all 20 or 30 pieces got sold off. It is a very simple addition to a product that we found. Now, it's become one of our most successful products. We do various versions of it. These are the ones which are all painted inside with various motifs which are taken from miniature paintings and hand painted. Now, this is another, I'm sorry, I'll rush it very quickly if you're okay with it, because I have less than 5 minutes left. Now, while I'm very passionate about handmade, it is an area which requires policy. Unfortunately, the government is kind of stuck in policy paralysis regarding handicraft. But what can we on our own do? So this is a project that I worked with, in association with the government. I'm not quite sure whether I did work with them, but I think I did. It was if instead of, calling something as handmade and, not having the power to protect that, if we told the craftspeople, use this logo and I will prosecute anybody who uses it wrongly. So the idea was to float it out to a lot of craftspeople, let them use it, because if this is IP protected, I can pursue somebody for wrongdoing or using it illegally. So it's using legal and policy ways to start affecting the sector. This is our store in Jaipur called Ananaya, where I kind of came across this fact a little later in life, where a brand plays a very important role because it says this is okay, this is fine. How do we, as a design person, have a voice in the market? So creating a brand was very important, and this is our space in Jaipur, where we present crafted products with the stories, origins, narratives. And here is where I say objects are messages in physical form, because each object says, this is where I am, this is who I am, this is who made me, and this is what I do. Now, in the course of working, I also figured out that one cannot expect the world out of a craftsperson sitting in a remote place. So there is a blend, an added step that is required if I need to make things work. So I set up my workshop in Jaipur, which kind of works like a mothership, where everything comes, oh God, I need to finish very quickly. Huh? Yeah. So we have a lot of traditional craftspeople who work with us in our workshop, but also all the work that we do around all over the country comes here for the final finishing, for the final, the final touch that is required. And really, that is what the crafts need. It is very difficult to expect craftspeople to match industrial standards using the resources that they have. And if all of us can just step in and put that little bit extra, I think we have something great to work with. This is an old photograph of the workshop. These are the people that I work with, and to be honest, I'm here not because of who I am, but it's because of who they are. Because they allow me to be here. The craftspeople are our backbone. Now there's also, you saw that red table that I made, in the previous slide. Now it's very often that people around the world come and take our intellectual property and mask it off as their own, not because they want to, but because we allow them to. This is one of the most successful products that this company called Moderator, which is a Danish company, which sells this product. They've sold upwards of, I think, 80 or 90,000 units of this one product in its various sizes and finishes, which are produced and made in India with the name of an Indian designer, which for me was an uphill task, because for many years I did not feel confident enough about me, myself, and the color of my skin to say, no, I want my name there. But then I started, and then it's worked. Almost all the companies that we make products for have a simple rule. You either sell it with the name of an Indian designer, that's me in my case, otherwise I won't sell it to you. It was a difficult one, because at many times people would say that, no, we don't do that, we don't have a policy. Well, make one. We sell a good product, we sell a good design, they are intellectually protected, so they cannot copy. And they're very well priced, because we make them here. So, well, the rules of the game are changing, so, well, change. Now, in our practice, as we had our setup, we started developing more and more products. Again, we work with a very international clientele. not just because it's around the world, because the world is here as well. We have a lot of people who travel the world and want to come back and see products that are of a certain standard, of a certain visual quality. So at AKFD, we develop products of that sensibility, but which are uniquely Indian. Things that fit in small homes, things that are chairs that allow you to sit cross-legged. That's one of our most successful chairs. It's called the Asan chair or the yoga chair. It's got a lot of space beneath it because, you know what, no matter where we are, we still want to broom and mop our homes. So our furniture should allow that. That is our store in Jaipur, and there's a workshop adjacent to it. So when a person comes, they see how something is made and not just what the product is. And it's a very important story to tell because the making is just as important as the product. Now, while we are very excited about products, there's this huge arena of temporary things, installations, exhibitions, which I really wanted to work on. And this is at the Serendipity Arts Festival last year in Goa, where they invited me to curate a special project called the Charpai Project. Now, I do not know whether enough charpais are there in south of India because of the moist climate. But the charpai is a ubiquitous product which is there across most of North India, most of dry India. As a furniture designer, I can very confidently say it is genius. It uses very little resources. It uses something that is native. It is flat pack. It lasts for a long time. It has got customizability. Anything and everything that you demand of a contemporary furniture product, the charpai has. The idea was how to get it back into public imagination. So the Charpai project, it consisted of workshops where we went to design schools and taught people how to weave a charpai, and it's very, very easy. It consisted of an exhibition, a competition, and an installation. And these are images of the installation where this was supposed to be an art kind of a situation, so there's a lot of construction going on in Goa, which we picked on, and we used scaffolding, but the frames were all woven in charpais. And it was a structure that people could walk on, climb on, go up, down, slide down, so it was very interactive. And in front of it was a music performance that was going on. So it's kind of maximizing your footprint by taking it to multiple levels so more people can see it. And unlike an arena or an amphitheater, it was like a multi-storied thing. These are images of the workshops. Poona Ramji and Hem Singh Ji from a village called Bugdi in Jodhpur, district Jodhpur and Bikaner, on that border. They came with us and they really taught the students how simple it was. And this is an outcome of a less than 3-hour long workshop. And the students were left skilled enough to weave their own. Can we play this video? Now this was I was invited last year by Ambiente Messe Frankfurt, which is the world's largest consumer goods fair, to create the India Pavilion. And this exercise was a very cheeky response to Make in India. Because, and here I say it with absolute sincerity, The cutting edge that we have is in our hands. It is not in technology, it is not in artificial intelligence, it is in our hand skills. I was giving a talk to the city of Frankfurt is what owns the exhibition, and there was an international audience, and in the address I said that while the world looks upon us as a market of 1.3 billion people, we are a land of 2.6 billion hands. And these hands are really what will take us forward. Look at the challenges we have. We don't have employment. We don't have the skills. We have a lot of people. Hand skills is it's like in the climate discussion, people are talking about, Mars and all sorts of things. Grow trees. It's plain in sight. The solution is right there. We just have to do it. Hand skills are like that. It's in plain sight. We just have to do it. And as architects, the largest employment of hand skills is in your profession. We just have to do it. And it's not rocket science, it's very easy. A few presentations that I did see did that. But here we have an opportunity. We spoke about Laurie Baker. We have these things, we have a history of it. We can do it, and I'm sure we will. The exhibition itself was designed and made in India. We had a very tiny budget. It was impossible to do it out there, so we designed and made it in India. We went back and installed it. 1,600 square feet of space was installed in the span of 3 days, and that was a challenge. The structure itself used a lot of craft skills, and a lot of crafted products were displayed within it, not just the product, but also the stories, because what we understand as craft is very different from what much of the world does. In much of the world, a craft is somebody sitting in a corner in a small house doing something as a hobby. In India, it is far bigger, and we take it for granted. So to share that with the world, that when we say craft, we also talk about scale. We might not have one factory that can produce 5,000 rugs in a month. We have 5,000 artisans who can do it. At another level, now this is where I'm coming back to the story of the Behrupia. There's a project that I was doing with a friend of mine in Bikaner, and this was the last house of Narendra Singh ji, who was the last sort of, so-called ruler of the city of Bikaner. It was a very sort of nondescript 1970s concrete house where the beams were in concrete but the roof was in putties. The architect was Jaipur-based architect Ravi Gupta, and I was asked to come and interpret it. And for us, we looked at this as an opportunity to tell a story. How can a space be can it be like a biography? Can it talk about a person, his life, or his imagined life? Here we literally reimagined the person. Narendra Singh Ji was actually a very dull, uninteresting person whose single redeeming factor was his love for animals. But in this space, we gave him an education at Eton. We made him part of military. This was the restaurant. We called it Pearls and Chiffon because that is what the Rajput women wear. So the entire space was infused with narrative, not a narrative which is not apparent. We don't say it, but it reads together, it ties together. It allows the other person who comes there to weave it or imagine it for themselves. So I was seeing a Netflix serial on art, where the artist said that art is not made, art is what is experienced. The viewer is as much part of the art as the object itself. So this space is also in a similar way, where a person is free to choose and see what they want to see, where they want to see, and that is what keeps the place alive. A lot of our products were used in that project, but not all. This was a room inspired by the freedom movement. Narendra Singh Ji was a 6-year-old kid then, but we still chose to speak that story. The spaces are rich with textiles and carpets, and it's very highly textured, very richly colored, because that is what the legacy of Bikaner is. This is another project that we did for a jewelry company based in Jaipur. They do very expensive, very high-end jewelry, and they were opening a showroom in Delhi. The challenge with the jewelry showroom is that they have to show to sell, and the amount they have to show means a lot of money. So when an average jewelry set that they sell is for about 60 to 80 lakhs, if they choose to put 100 sets on display, just imagine the kind of money that is in inventory alone. So the challenge was how to make a space that creates the impression, that engages and involves the customer without having to show jewelry. The space was imagined as the home of Gayatri Devi. How would she have lived in a small apartment? And it's done accordingly. These are small viewing rooms imagined as the bedroom, and how it would be shown. These are cases where some jewelry is there, but the other empty spaces are filled with crockery. As in, is it a crockery case? The bathrooms were tiny, but we found a lot of antiques, a lot of old found objects, which are beautiful still, and infused the space with it. While the space is important, it cannot be devoid of the service or the other things that are around it. So everything from the crockery, the cutlery, even the kind of things that will be served were part of the discussion that we had. The busts that the jewelry will be displayed on, we picked on the motif of the octagon and used it in several places, including the building and in the display tools. The jewelry box was reimagined with rich Banarsi fabrics. This was a project that we did not too far from here. I cannot take the name of the person whose house this is. It's part of our agreement. But it's in a small temple town where I had the opportunity to work with a lot of temple craftspeople. He's a person of great social importance, and to be able to use crafted product and all Indian products can potentially have a great cascading effect where people see and accept Indian handmade crafted product as something which is of enduring beauty. The spaces are very clean, very easy, very generous, but yet very richly detailed, much like what our palaces have always been like, but with very Indian materials. This is a project that we did in Jaipur. We call it Shikar Bagh. It again belongs to one of the Thakurs whose bagh is bang in the middle of Jaipur. It was imagined as a hunting lodge where there'd be people can go on top and see. Incidentally, even though this is in the center of Jaipur, not a single high-rise is visible from the upper level. The building is designed to go away, and in a place like Rajasthan, green is such a welcome respite. So the entire building is designed to be covered in green, and this photograph is about last year's. Now it is much, much greener. The insides, this is a steel building, and it's meant to be serviced, so the entire roof can come out and get serviced from inside. The doors, windows are in wood, but the essential structure is in steel. We had a very, very tiny budget. The total budget was about 60 lakhs, in which the entire thing had to be finished, complete with services and all that. I'm very lucky because the client recovered their net investment in about 6 months' time. Now, we don't work alone, we work with people. Now, this is a project we did with Incubus and Landor consultants who were working for the Delhi airport, where they called me on my skills of getting things done. Now, the greatest idea is of no use if it is not done. And to do things, you require many skills, not just those of design or administration. You require wit, you require just rolling up your socks and getting on with it. We had a very short duration to this project because it was to be inaugurated. We had about 1,000 people working across the country to get this done. The discs it's all hand done also. So the entire project was completed in about 50 days after we got the approvals from the client, which is a feat, I think. This is a project that we did with a very well-known architecture and design company called Lotus. We define our practice as a practice of detail and process. We are not fussed about doing our own project, it doesn't really matter, as long as we get to celebrate and enjoy detail. So the entire back, as well as the lamps, were designed and made by us, very, very tightly detailed, and this installation was done without our being there. These are other projects where we collaborate with architects. So this is an elevation that was designed by us. And this is in cast aluminum, designed to get the light in at a certain time of day, show the views where we want to and not show them where we want to. This project was also done with Incubus Consultants, which is a restaurant in Washington. Again, highly, highly detailed, with zero chance of error because we were not doing the installation. The measurements were done in millimeters. We designed it, built it, made it, we shipped it there, ready to be received on the site. Everything, I'm talking about the walls, the lamps, the furniture, the amount of detail that this project went to. So this is called the Nishane-e-Phul, which is one of the many medals that Punjab royalty kind of gave themselves. So from that, we derived a motif. That motif was then made into inlaid patterns and then inlaid into the tables. And each table is now sold for, I think, $1,000. That is to allow you to sit on that table and have a meal. So Indian handcrafted product, if presented well, if presented nicely, has got tremendous value around the world. Now, while a lot of projects do definitely have a commercial import and it's important to do them, there's some projects that don't, and that's fine. This was a project we were doing for a development agency called Access, who wanted to get women rickshaw drivers to start driving rickshaws because it's a very large, and it's a great source of employment, especially into a city like Jaipur. The brief that I got was, how do I design a rickshaw which is not like a regular rickshaw, which is very tourist friendly, for which a person would willingly pay a little bit extra, but the cost of the rickshaw has to be equal to or less than what is conventionally available. So we worked on an existing chassis, we worked with the existing people and did the least possible changes. So small changes like a deeper seat, a small ledge in front, a place to put a water bottle, a tip box, a lockable box, a phone charger, these small things, relocation of the indicators, a retractable roof, because if you're roaming around the city of Jaipur, you want to see the city and not just the sides. So small changes, putting distinctive things like a bright pink color and a golden colored canopy, which would make it stand out, and in a male bastion, immediately make it look different. Make it such that a guy would not like to drive it. So it's playing on perception and what the social situation might need. The project is extremely successful, and I'm really glad that in this one project, I figured that design does make a difference. Thank you.
The good thing is a wonderful presentation. So let's come to the idea of some of the basic ideas of what you've been doing and what's been lifelong passion as a kind of I would rather put as one of the modern protagonists of Indian craft. And let's talk a bit about the craft in our milieu and in our culture and how important that is to preserve it and kind of to bring it forth into the the so-called design. And we'll also talk about the politicization of craft, and we'll also talk about a few ideas of absence of craft and how do you feel that. Okay, so relevance of craft in the contemporary times, let's talk about it. With relevance to globalization and when homogenization takes part, we're kind of making our cities same all across the world, making fashion same all across the world, kind of erasing the individuality, making us one, Homo sapien across the world. And art plays a very important role in kind of, bringing out the culture, identity, as well as, the context into picture. So let's talk about, again, also the political narrative of the craft. And the nature of one's engagement with the world shapes, his or her perspective about how craft and understanding our context, history, culture, and identity, to put it mildly. And you have clearly kind of demonstrated how that could kind of add value and kind of, bring in a kind of identity and cultural identity and cultural memory to the front when we are kind of, consciously scrubbing some part of it. Yeah, so art plays a major role. So let's talk about what does a negation or absence of craft mean to you? Especially when, I come from, we practice very high contemporary modernism where the start of modernism kind of completely negated craft. I kind of tried to erase it and for a modern technology and modern way of looking. But the interesting part is both converge as the idea of an utopian society. The craft also, even the art and craft movement by, William Morris also kind of conceived a kind of very idealistic utopian society. So was modern architecture, which kind of negated it. How do you kind of reconcile these two things about,
So I really feel that, when we try and push our crafts away, we are trying to run away from our own identity or our potential identity and try and become no one. And if I may be very crude, I say that we are heading towards a poverty. When we lose our identity, when we lose who we are, we lose our perspective on our position in society, in the world, that is the mark of poverty. We are not okay being who we are or who we can be. We are not okay with what is local. We always search for what is beyond. So I think crafts hold a very, very special place. And I'm not talking about the fruitiness or the elaborateness, whatever. It is a simple act of making that we're running away from. Now, I know many of the audience would be people who can make things, but I know of very many people who cannot even stitch a button onto their shirts. That is the root of craft. If we have two hands, we make. If we can't make, we can't really appreciate either. So at both ends, from a mental perspective, where we're running away from our identity or who we are, to the physical thing of being hesitant in making. I think both things are happening simultaneously. And when you talk about architecture, it becoming uniform, well, yeah, but why? And I can't seem to get to that because we have got so many stories, we have so many things that are working for us, and yet we choose to leave them and become this dull shade of gray. So I don't really reconcile the two. I think there are ways of working together, but it is actually working together of minds that is needed.
Okay, so let's think about the idea of the hand, the kind of, the process that involved, like kind of hand and the material and the skill, and that's some part that you're talking about being, putting craft in the context of, every culture. So now, the idea that the art, craft, and design, even though they are, they're used parallelly at some point, but there are conscious efforts all across the world. I mean, you are one of the proponents of to mash it together and converge all these three streams together and look at it in a particular way. And even I read somewhere that in 2002, the American Art and Craft Museum removed craft from it and they call it art and design. So it's kind of, converging craft into the larger picture, in the larger, dialogue of design. So how do you kind of differentiate or kind of between art, craft, and design, even though they're parallel streams, and where are the points of convergence that you could look at?
So I might have a strong view, and that's strictly my own, is that art to me is something which is only an idea. It's unmanifest. It's there. It's a thought. To manifest any thought, you need to have the skill to be able to do it. That is where a craft comes in. To manifest anything, you require a craft. The structure of manifestation is what design is. It gives the organizational formwork for it. So let us take an example which is not in the world of design. So, for example, there's a thought in the mind of, say, a poet or a thinker. It is expressed, as a poem by a person who's skilled in words. The words are an act of design, the dictionary is an act of design, language is an act of design because it gives a structure to the sounds. Those sounds are then interpreted by somebody who can sing it. So that person is skilled in singing. They have the craft of singing. So we have, art, design, and craft coming together in many different ways. And it's not to negate an architect. Each one of us has got all three aspects and perhaps more inbuilt within us. So to look at craft as devoid of artistic or design sensibilities is kind of stupid, because it's all there. And we cannot look at any one without addressing the others. So it's just the degrees of involvement, and that's it.
Okay, so that goes to our next question about the art from the art, the way it is the contextual one, that is the indigenous one, as we say that, because it is rooted in the context, the people and the material that derived from the context. That also makes it kind of the social idea, social utopia around art. But also we have the industrialization of art, what Bauhaus of Ethelried, or even Moholy-Nagy in the Bauhaus, during the Bauhaus School of Architecture, or the Bauhaus School of Design kind of propagated. And that comes to the modern times of Zaha taking, the parametrics to the extent of high art. So how do you reconcile these? How do you look at these two streams of, extremely different stuff?
I might talk about it in a slightly different context. I think many of us are obsessed with the idea of revolution, obsessed with the idea of new. And I question that obsession. Should we look at evolution versus revolution? The Bauhaus evolved as an outcome of a certain situation that happened after the World Wars. Where did we take it from? Why did we not evolve into something from where we came from? We had the freedom movement, we had Khadi happening here. Why did we not evolve beyond that? So the question is, we still see and look for that revolution somewhere, but not evolving from who we are, what we are, and what we have. And this, I think, is something which we might want to consider. What is this obsession with new? What is this obsession with Zaha Hadid? She is a master and she used her tools in an incredible manner. But is that evolution for me? Is that evolution for my land? Is it evolution for us here? We can use the same tools and craft a beautiful building using skills. That might be an evolution. But do we need it?
But that kind of positioning also kind of lend the politicization of craft to some level, because that happened in the Nazi Germany or in Italy, the fascist Italy. That was exactly the same kind of thing they were going through. They were kind of craft is being used as a tool to kind of identify your nationalistic agenda, and the craft has been used as a political tool. So how do you kind of say that, well, the identity of the craft being a national image is not being misused politically at some level? You may have good intentions, but
Well, I don't think Khadi was ever misused. And if you talk about the greatest designers in the country, I think Gandhi was a brilliant guy, because he took the idea of Khadi, which is a crafted process, and showed us the way forward.
No, I'm not talking about Khadi. I'm talking about craft in general, not about Khadi. You put a good example. Khadi was definitely politicized, if not misused, because Khadi was the fundamental idea behind, our self-reliance and in the freedom movement, and which has been misused by politicians now. If you look at another way,
you know what? Give something to politicians and they'll use it.
Right.
So I would not even venture that. I do not think crafts belongs to politicians. Belongs to all of us, and very firmly would say we have to do something, because I don't know whether the politicians really care. The craftspeople are not a vote bank. They're too fragmented. They form a minuscule percentage of population in any area. Why would a politician bother? I'm not even trying to justify them. I'm just saying, objectively, they don't stand to get anything out of it. We do. Our livelihoods are at stake, and we have to do it. We cannot leave it to somebody else, and least of all, politicians.
Okay, now before I open up the questions to the to the audience, so what's the role of a designer in the changing times of robotics and AI, where all this mass customization is on your fingertips? So how do you ensure? How do you ensure that the identity is not being appropriated? Like, it is very easy for a designer in the US to take a very traditional craft in Rajasthan, the one that you've shown, and replicate it in no time when the AI and the robotics go to the next level. And with the same amount of customization, probably a better product. So what is the role you think you are? Are you, and I come across the word called craftivist. Are you a craftivist? Like,
No.
craft and activism together?
No, I'm a realist.
But you kind of mobilize, you kind of support around 4,000 people in the art community, and so.
Let me put that in perspective.
So how do you kind of ensure that this particular, the idea of the idea of AI kind of completely sabotaging the revivalist agenda?
So 2-3 things. One, I don't support them, they support me, to put that in perspective. Second is that, in this world of AI, the question is not AI, the question is what we choose to support. It is not the maker's prerogative, it is the taker's prerogative. It is what we choose to value. Now, we might have a very well-finished product, which is so-called crafted, and also, by the way, we don't need to go to America. We have, factories in Surat. We have in Gujarat, there's a massive textile company that exports all over the world's biggest towel maker. They have appropriated a craft which is in their vicinity. Barely 50 kilometers from their factory is Ajrakpur, where Ajrak is done, and this company is copying their product, screen printing it, not even screen, digitally printing it and selling it with the name Ajrak. So we don't have to go very far. We have it happening here itself. We take our own case. There's no problem in that. AI has its benefits, and it's up to us to choose where to use it. It's a sword. It's a knife. We can kill someone, or we can, use it for surgery. It's our call. And I would not put it onto the technology. I'd put it onto our sensibilities, what we value as a society, as a community. Do we take care of not trust people because we need to take care of them? I don't think we should have the kind of ego that we are going to take care of trust people. I think there's really trashy stupidity on our part. Do we care about ourselves? Do we care about building a society where my child will be proud and happy to be an Indian, not just in thought, but by how they express their homes, how they express what they wear? And in Indianness, they are proud and confident of.
So you look at more like a fair trade product, and then people where the consumer are responsible to kind of, preserve the craft.
Absolutely.
Okay, that comes to a conclusion. I open the things to the audience. We can take 2 questions. Already run short of time. Make sure that your question is brief, no statement, please. He made a good presentation. Don't tell that his presentation was good. We know that. Just ask the questions. 2 questions, please. Anyone, just pass around the mic.
How do you deal with the concern for blemish? On one side, you're promoting handmade. You did talk about also the need to finish it, and you're dealing with the Western world, clients from the Western world, and there is this modern aesthetic where things are clinical, neat, against the Eastern aesthetic of seeing the presence of the hand. So how do you deal with this kind of contradiction of on one side having to deliver? Do you feel the need to deliver very clean products, or are you choosing to stick to letting the blemish of the hand surface and keep it there? And by resorting to clean, polished aesthetic, do you in some ways undermine this whole idea of promoting the hand?
So I think I heard you, but I'm not so sure. So if not, then just tell me again. I don't think aesthetics is about decoration. Aesthetics is about expression. And some of the most beautiful buildings are just expressed well. And this is something which modernist architecture also does, and tradition also does. If you go to a house in Jaisalmer and see how they tie their twigs, it's beautifully expressed. It's not decorated. And decoration can be inherent in the process and not applied on. If you look at a Banarsi sari, the decoration is inherent in the process. It is not applied on. And I think by looking at craft as something that is applied on, we're doing a massive disservice to the potential and possibilities in craft. What we do for the international markets is toned down, but is expressed in a way. The joinery is expressed in that way. There was a small bench that I showed, which is an interpretation of the charpai. It is really well constructed. And that is where the craft is. Things need not be embellished to be called a craft. So I don't know if that answers.
Just want to clarify, I'm not sure if you heard, I said the blemish, B-L-E-M-I-S-H, the problems of what are seen as problems when something is made with the hand. I just want to clarify in case you heard that or something else.
So you're talking about defect versus effect?
The perception that it is a defect, which in modern aesthetic it's seen as a defect, that it showcases that it's not smooth but it's actually made by hand.
So I'll choose to answer that question in a slightly oblique manner. Now, we do a lot of exports. We supply to many people around the world. Our quality team's job is to manage expectations, not manage quality. Because quality is a very abstract term. No? There's nothing like quality. How do we manage expectations? How do we tell the customer, this is something which is natural and will happen? And that comes in the realm of language. It comes in the realm of how you illustrate a situation. And do we give them the tools to illustrate onwards? So that basket chair that I showed, a lot of variation happens from chair to chair. Yeah, I can only produce 50 chairs in a month. The company needs 500 in a month. So it's a question of how do we communicate that this is what the chair is about. And this is what it is. So it is only managing expectations and no absolute in terms of quality. Where it does matter is in the performance. The chair should not break up into splinters when you sit on it. That's performance. That is non-negotiable. The finish has to be a certain, type. It has to be a certain type. Those are non-negotiables. So it is managing expectations which is important and not quality per se.
We can take one more question, please.
Hi, sir. So my question is, so in that project you told about scaffoldings and charpai, that project, said how you decide the number of materials to be used in a project and how you decide the colors in that project, that it was colorful while seeing it, and how you decide the number of colors to be used.
Okay, so we can answer that later when we meet. Someone else, much more relevant? Somebody over there. Please meet him after the stuff. You can explain that to him.
Hi, Ayush. I run a store named
Please be louder. Please be louder.
I run a store
No,
named
louder.
Kiara.
We can't hear you.
Hi, Ayush. Your story was really inspiring. I actually run a store named Kiara.
Louder,
So,
please.
you can hear me?
Why don't you
Yeah.
come here?
Okay, no problem. So I run a store named Kiara. It's basically, showcasing Indian designers and craft people. But then I find it very difficult to make the architects and designers who go to China and buy understand the value of, craft and handmade things. So how we can make it affordable for people to buy it?
So there are 2-3 ways of looking at it. One is, very often people build their home and they actually build their home for the first day, the Grah Pravesh. And at the Grah Pravesh, everything has to be done and finished. which I find a little strange. And why should a home be finished when you've just moved in? It should be finished when you die in that house. So this obsession with having everything ready requires a person to go into a place where he can find, sofa and bed and this and that and the other, and which is a lot easier in China, to be very honest. They are very organized. People go there, they buy everything they need for home, and they're done within a day, which is next to impossible in India. Working with crafts is a challenge, and I would not deny that. And it's a challenge that comes with its costs. But also, working with crafts is not that difficult. You just have to look around the road and see what's available. If you have a guy who does denting, painting of cars, that guy's a craftsman, see what he can do. You have somebody fixing tires, see what they can do. We don't need to have, a craftsman in Jharkhand to work with. We don't. We are very rich in what we have. We have a tailor down the road. What can the tailor do? We have somebody repairing fishing nets. We're in Calicut. What can the fishing net do? So the idea of craft as something which is rare and found and expensive, we can really discard that. We can just see what is around us and work with it. And as a community, as innovative and intelligent as architects, you can do it with just the people on site. It is not rocket science. It's very, very easy. And that is where I talk about the Charpai project also. Students, anybody, it took 3 hours, net 3 hours, for us to teach them how to weave a charpai. Now that's not expensive. You can find rope, you can find wood, you can easily make it. But are we willing to invest our time, our reputation, our risk of doing something wrong in doing that? It is certainly an opportunity worth taking, but it's our call, it's your call.
Okay, with that we come to the conclusion, and thank you so much. Thank you, Ayush. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was indeed an eye-opening session.